The college baseball experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is presented by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. Sign up today, win $100, and get $100 at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. State restrictions apply. We're also brought to you by NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Start your engines with Rod and Cody and get ready to gamble on Daytona 500 this Sunday. All right, already, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the College Baseball Experience, and it's the first one of 2023. As you can see, I'm a little bit rusty. I already jacked up the intro and the ads, but if you're wondering who you're listening to, my name is Noah Bieniek, aka 77 on Twitter, and I have a whole new clan with me this year on the College Baseball Experience, the Spittin' Seeds 24/7 clan. Let's start with Beav. Introduce yourself to the people and just let them know like what kind of your messages and what have you been doing in the college baseball realm pretty much your whole time here.
So, hey, what's up? I'm Beav. I guess you can call me the leader of us ragtag crew of Spittin' Seeds guys.
Debatable.
Debatable. Hey, you wouldn't be here without me, son. Remember that. I own you. No, we're just three dads connected that really love college baseball, saw an opportunity to be able to help grow the game while also being able to enjoy some stuff, being able to see what's been able to happen the last couple of years, especially with Major League Baseball when they went on hiatus. College baseball really blossomed, was a great opportunity for all of us. So us, man, it's all about sunflower seeds, all about college baseball, all about growing the game and sneaking a few bets in and win some money while I can. You know how it goes.
Love it. And we'll go to your fellow in orange, fellow friend there, and Flem, introduce yourself to the people, man.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Fleming. I reside in Knoxville, Tennessee with the rest of the crew, and we're just here to enjoy a good time watching college baseball, specifically kind of the Southeast, not exclusively the SEC, but the Southeast in general.
And Beard, you're a little bit different than the two. You're repping some purple and gold. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, what's going on? Matt Beard. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, but Dad's from Texas, so had an opportunity to kind of pick who I wanted, and LSU was the team, and it's always been that way. And it started out with baseball, moved to the other sports as well, but kind of college baseball, and here we are. And this is what it's all about, and we're 2 days away.
Awesome.
Yeah, and see, he got to cheat. He got to start with a really good college baseball team. We had to earn ours.
That's true.
Still haven't earned it.
Houston fan literally is a cheater, so I just want to throw that out there.
Hey, well, with everything that's coming out lately, it turns out there's more than just Houston.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. You've only been screaming that for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it only counts if you get caught, Matt. You guys were dumb enough to get caught.
It's all right. That's why we won it again.
That is true. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the SEC preview. That's why a lot of people jumped on and clicked on. We're going to be talking a lot of gambling odds throughout. If these guys don't have it prepped, I will just mention it after. We're going to preview each team. We're even going to go over some of the scheduling. And we right now are viewing SEC outright odds. And from the specific wording of it, I think it's the first year that we've ever seen conference outrights. I think that it's conference tournament, personally, because it says postseason tournament included. So I think it's SEC tournament odds. Yeah. Then we're going to go look at the Omaha odds. So it's to appear in the Omaha 8. And then the College World Series Championship odds as well. So we'll be listing all three of those for each of these teams. And I guess without further ado, let's jump into this. And it starts off with Beard's Tigers down there in Baton Rouge. Tell us about the number one overall team in the country.
So there's, number one, it comes with a lot of pressure. It obviously is easy for everybody to say number one for what they have, and the transfer portal obviously being number one in that, the recruiting class being number one, what you have with Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan, who is not being talked about enough, which is wild because if he were to start the season with a 12, 13-game hitting streak, no one would think that it wouldn't be possible for Trey Morgan. But he's kind of getting forgotten, obviously, because of Tommy White, Paul Skeens, these guys that transferred in for LSU, and Dylan Cruz. Obviously, everybody's, possibly number 1 or number 2 pick, depending on who's picking and who needs what. But him and Dylan Cruz are creeping up on the all-time hit record if they were to stay all 4 years, which was reset by Duplantis not too long ago. So a guy that can do that at the plate, but what he does at first base it's unbelievable. Flem considers most of his plays routine.
He's
Mr. Routine.
He's
Mr. Routine. That's right. I mean, but that's the one player that I think is important, which is wild because everybody knows who he is. Another guy I'm looking at is Jordan Thompson at shortstop. LSU's biggest problem last year was defense. They were absolutely atrocious, and for how bad they were defensively, they still had some success that they probably didn't deserve. So if they can improve that, especially up the middle with Jordan Thompson, if that can be improved, the sky's the limit for this team because the talent is just otherworldly. Unfortunately, they took a hit losing Grant Taylor, a pitcher. That's a huge blow, but because of the transfer portal, it was good to him with Christian Little, Thatcher Hurd. We've already mentioned Paul Skeen. So the opportunity is there for this team. They have what I consider probably 2 tough stretches. They've got Texas, a one-game Texas, at Texas that'll be fun. Everybody will be watching, paying attention. Then you go Texas A&M, Arkansas, UT, USC, South Carolina for all those West Coasters out there. And then kind of dive right back into it, and you go to Louisiana Lafayette, Ole Miss, Bama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Georgia. The back half of that season, depending on how those guys do to start the season, could really change how the first part of that season goes for LSU, because the first part, A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, I mean, we're going to find out real quick what number 1 means for them. So defense is the biggest thing for LSU this year because the offense is there. They've got the talent. Go out and put it together and do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And leading it off with Trey Morgan was, he was so great in their regional run 2 years ago in Manery's last year. And he's just, like you mentioned, kind of forgotten about in this team. For me, on paper, LSU doesn't have any like blaring weaknesses, and that's why they're the number 1 team in the country. If there were question marks, if you were to want to purposely poke some holes into this team, I think you can do it starting with the starting rotation and their lack of SEC experience. But really, it's that, and then hopefully they've improved in the defense. You add Tommy White in replacement of Jacob Berry, you don't really add any increase of better defense. It's really kind of just the same. But like you mentioned, at shortstop, they should be a little bit better over there. Anything else on LSU from the Volunteers' point of view?
I mean, so we're all familiar with the family. I mean, you got the first family of Division I baseball in the Taylor family. I mean, the brothers being at UAB, Arkansas, and Grant over at LSU. I mean, the loss of him, has to be just absolutely tremendous, right? I mean, this is a guy that most sources are saying was by far and away the best pitcher on that staff in the fall. Matt, obviously you're way closer to the situation here. And we stayed in touch at least with the family during the course of last season. So, it's definitely a big hit to all of us, even as Tennessee fans. You definitely want to see number 1 at their best, but really, how are you going to be able to cover up something like that?
The offense. The offense, and then we know that because we saw it last year with the guys that they had in the pen, because thank God we're not going to do that this year, but they would throw 7, 8, 9 guys out of the pen in a game. So the arms are there. It's just who's going to now eat up more innings in a longer amount of time instead of, all right, you go get 7, you go get 8, you go get 9. I need you to go get 6, 7, 8.
I would call you a little crazy, like just handicapping baseball in general when you say like the offense is going to cover up for the pitching. But we saw it last year in college baseball with Texas A&M. They really didn't have great pitching They had polish in the back end, but after that, like they had Detmer at the top, but they got there into Omaha with hitting. I'll talk about them in a little bit. But it is possible.
You also saw the opposite. You saw Tennessee, who was mashing the ball over the field, and then a good pitching Notre Dame team came in and took the series from them in the Supers.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think Tennessee's got the three-headed monster. I think they match up well with LSU this year. Tennessee's got question marks on, through 1 through 9 because there's no, established SEC talent there except for a couple guys.
Why I ranked Tennessee 1 ahead of LSU because of the pitching staff. Good.
No, you just did it because of the curse. Don't even lie.
That's an interesting point of view. Like, because everybody listening might think that Beard actually thought that or ranked LSU number 1 for us. We took all of our rankings and we made a composite. 3 of us had LSU number 1. Beard had Tennessee number 1. Prior to getting into Tennessee at number 2. Anything else that stems from you guys ranking each other's teams number 1 over your own?
It's all the curse, man. It's all the curse.
It's a curse.
Nobody wants to remember.
we refuse.
I think Tennessee has more question marks than LSU does, just from a position standpoint. But as far as like a pitching rotation, if those guys can stay healthy, even the back end of the bullpen will be solid in a 3-game series.
My biggest question with LSU, and I can definitely understand why, especially now with the loss of Grant Taylor, that's the only thing that would give some kind of hesitation in my mind. You have so many guys that, Noah, like you made the point, just aren't battle tested in the SEC. When you're looking at depth and you lose a guy of that caliber, what's that going to do? Are you risking potential injury, pushing guys to go longer innings where teams like, for instance, Tennessee, I know that's such an easy one to go after, but you have the wizard and Frank Anderson for the pitching coach is able to pretty much do whatever he wants and throw bodies at a situation and not have much of a drop off. I just don't see something like that being able to happen for LSU this year. And like it has been, unfortunately, in years past due to injury.
Yep, I agree with you there, and shout out Flem for bringing up the super regional bounce. I was all over Notre Dame there, and shout out to the listeners that tailed me on that one. I don't know if you guys saw me last year on the timeline just touting away at that one, but I was kind of, that was the biggest hit, and I'm still kind of living off that with the baseball gambling. So I went game by game with Notre Dame, and their pitching staff was stellar, and they had some hot bats, and that's kind of like how I'm going to handicap most of this year's season as well. Is like pitching I value more than hitting, and on any given day, a stud pitcher or even a pitcher with his best stuff can shut down one of the best lineups.
Yep, absolutely.
So Flem, I gave you the lead on Tennessee. Let's jump into the number 2 team in the SEC for us, the Tennessee Volunteers. You and Beav can kind of do a dribble handoff type thing here with.
So obviously, Tennessee's pitching. That's what they're going to be known for this year. They start off with the 2-headed monster with the 2 first-team All-Americans, Chase Dolander and Chase Burns. Dolander's going to be probably a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft. He's a mid to upper 90s fastball, and he's got great secondary and third pitches. He's just unbelievable. He's got control. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He's just everything you want to see in a college pitcher, which is what most of these scouts are just screaming about. They just want. He's very, very, very polished. Chase Burns is probably going to be your Saturday guy. I'm not sure how Tony's going to work these guys Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I do believe Dolander's starting Friday against Arizona. So I'll probably put Chase Burns up on Saturday. He's a top prospect coming out of Gallatin, Tennessee. Again, he's a mid to upper 90s fastball. Not as good a control as Dolander's going to have, but he's going to fill the zone up pretty heavily. And then you got Chase Burns, another Middle Tennessee, Drew Beam, another Middle Tennessee kid. Again, he's going to be a little bit more your mid 90s, a little bit more control. He struggled a bit last year with his control in the back half. I think he wasn't used to pitching as much coming out of high school, so I think his arm got a little bit tired. And he's still freshman All-American last year.
I would say Tidwell stepped in too, and they kind of piggybacked, and
They
that third
did.
starter as well.
But Tennessee is literally replacing their whole entire starting lineup. Drew Gilbert, Trey Lipscomb, Seth Stevenson, Jarrell Ortega, Luke Lipsius, Jordan Beck, Evan Russell, Cortland Lawson, all gone to the draft. Says a lot about Tony and the talent he's bringing in to Knoxville. You've also had Logan Steenstra, who was a Kansas City kid who was kind of a utility player. He stepped away from baseball this year. So he's no longer with the Tennessee. They're looking to fill the whole entire roster. Really, the biggest guys that are coming back are Jared Dickey. Got some time behind the plate last year. Also played a little bit of left field. Probably going to see him in left field this year to start out. Then you got Kyle Booker, probably looking to break out. He's going to be my breakout player for Tennessee this year. I pegged him last year as my breakout player, but got a little thumb injury, kind of set him back a little bit. And then obviously, given the offensive stats, it's tough to get playing time in that roster last year. Let's see. You got Zane Denton, the transfer from Alabama, the former All-American.
Avoiding Blake Burke like the plague. Just say his name. Say his name.
I'm getting there. Zane,
Come on.
Zane's going to play Knoxville.
God.
You got Maui Ahunas from Kansas. So you got two transfers coming in to fill the left side of the infield. Christian Moore, the kid from New York, had stellar offensive numbers last year. Let me see if I can find these for you.
Tennessee's going to play with 8 players.
Hit 305 with 10 homers. And then you got little Ken Griffey Jr. sitting at first base, Blake Burke. Freshman All-American, hit 326, 14 home runs. The impressive part is he only had 95 at-bats. So he's got some stellar power. And if you've ever seen him hit a baseball, he has the smoothest swing I've seen since Griffey Jr. It is.
There'll be a lot made about the short porch and right for the Vols with him being a lefty, but it don't matter. He
Parking
touches
lot
that
power.
ball, it's going 400 feet.
Parking lot.
I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, big time power.
Then you're going to have probably, I would assume, Griffin Merritt, the Cincinnati transfer, former conference player of the year, probably fill right field, strong arm. And then behind the plate, it's probably going to be by platoon. Charlie Taylor, Ryan Miller, and Kyle Stark will probably fill that void. Charlie's kind of been around the program for a couple of years. Really struggled behind the plate last year. Had a good summer. Has had a good spring so far. The crowd likes him. Team likes him. You probably see him kind of filling that battery up for Tennessee most of the time. But you're also going to have, Christian Scott. He's a 5th or 6th year player. Kind of a good utility guy. He's very good defensively, very good contact hitter. Got good wheels on the base. He's going to see quite a bit of playing time. Probably going to see Kavarius Tears as the Tennessee DH. Big, strong, redshirt freshman. Kind of fits right into that Tony Vitello philosophy, just playing guerrilla ball. Then you got Logan Chambers, kid from Arkansas. He's was a big-time JUCO prospect. Came out of, I think, Bryant, Arkansas.
He caused a famous stink, didn't he?
Yeah, so he's the kid that the Tony and Van Horn chest bumped about, or got their little argument, the famous clip. So they were arguing about his recruitment, and he picked Tennessee over Arkansas. Hit 400 in JUCO ball, didn't get much playing time last year. He's looking to kind of make a name for himself this year. Then you're going to have Dylan Dreiling, a freshman from Hayes, Kansas. I've been watching their practices a little bit. He's been starting out in left field on occasions. Big kid. Has been playing in a college summer league since he was probably about a freshman in high school. So they kind of knew what he was going to get. He's been playing against college competition pretty much his whole entire life. So that kind of rounds out what you're probably going to see most offensively. Also bring back the best stash in college baseball, Kirby Canal, the lefty, little crafty. He's not going to overpower you with a fastball, but he's got a nasty little curve. Then you got the Gator killer, Camden Sewell. 6'4" righty, a little bit more of a 3/4 baller. Just absolutely owns the University of Florida. So looking forward to that. And then Halverson, kid from Missouri, transferred in, was the kind of the ace of the Friday night guy for Missouri a couple years ago. Went down with, I believe, Tommy John last year. Missed the whole entire season. He's back. He's a mid to upper 90s guy when he's healthy, so looking forward to see him. And then you got Zach Joyce, brother Ben Joyce, Mr. 104. Zach is coming off of sitting out a year. He stepped away from baseball. I think he saw what Ben was having, how much fun he was having, and decided to jump back into the team. Tony let him on the team. He's another mid to upper 90s guy. Tennessee's got some arms on this team. And then a freshman to watch is Hunter Sloop. He's a big 6'7" kid. He's going to be a mid to upper 90s. I'm interested to see how much playing time he gets on the dish for Tennessee this year. So that kind of just some big highlights. Kind of what they do offensively is going to determine how well they do this year. Because the pitching will be there.
Yeah, for sure. So Flem kind of ran through the whole roster for us. We appreciate that. They lost a lot of pieces, so we'll give them that. We had to get a lot of the roundup from the hitters on that standpoint. B, do you have anything that Flem left out, or you want to jump into the schedule and give us some analysis on that?
Man, I think you're pretty well covered. I think everybody's tired
too.
of hearing about Tennessee right now. You know what I mean? Now, I mean, it's a great team. Tony's done quite a bit. I mean, with the coaching that's in place, it's quite possibly the greatest starting rotation ever assembled for college baseball. Yeah. I mean, you have 3 guys that are projected to be top 10 picks in their respective drafts. I mean,
Matt's good. I can't wait to
Olander
just make Cruz look like a fool.
Oh, I'm not worried about it because Vitello will start him on day 2 or something and screw the whole rotation up like he did against Notre Dame. So
that was a little.
That's cold, man. That wound is still fresh.
I said it when it happened. It was the worst mistake they made.
You remember that one time?
It's all right. The issue here is, remember, you're attending the baseball game with me. What happened the last time you went to the games with me? Is that 1L, 2L, 3L, 4, 5 L's in one season?
Matt hasn't seen LSU beat Tennessee since we've known each other. I'll just put it that way. In any sport.
Steve, tell us about Kentucky or something.
So, I mean, running through this schedule, I loaded it up. It's hard to see on YouTube. We're on YouTube, the college experience on YouTube. You can view it. Is there any potholes possible for Tennessee this year, guys?
I mean, in the SEC, there's always the opportunity, right? You're running through a gauntlet. Let's be honest. If everybody thinks that you're going to be able to sweep everybody like what Tennessee was doing last year, you got another thing coming. I mean, baseball is hard. I mean, there's just no way that you can expect sweeps like that again. I mean, playing LSU on the road, I mean, if you come away taking that series, you got to be feeling really, really darn good about yourself. I mean, and even some off teams like a small game against Tennessee Tech, even though that they're going to be in, a midweek game. I mean, Tennessee Tech has proved time in, time out that they're going to be a tough out for anybody. I mean, look at the amount of transfers they have to going other SEC teams. I mean, it's basically just a farm system for bigger guys. There's always big bats coming through there. I mean, baseball in Tennessee is something that's always drastically underrated, whether it goes from JUCO all the way up. I mean, teams like directional team like ETSU has produced some big time guys and some unanimous All-Americans as pitchers and hitters. You got Walter State, JUCO, Dyersburg. I mean, all kinds of baseball in this area.
Lipscomb, Austin P.
Austin P. Yeah, Austin P's had more draft picks than Tennessee had for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that is misunderstood about the state of Tennessee when it comes to baseball. But, I mean, potholes, once again, A&M, Arkansas, I mean, all of those are going to be tough outs no matter what you do.
Yeah, and I think a sneaky sleeper at the end of the season comes at South Carolina. Their pitching is really good. We'll talk about them in a little bit. If I was Colby, I would be tearing the schedule to shreds because you do not play one road game outside of the SEC. So it's somewhat of a common theme in baseball, especially in the SEC. But that's just kind of like the knock on the scheduling here. But great job by Vitello to get almost every game at home here. And how about the MLB4? I mean, come on, I can't get a Michigan game against either Tennessee or Arizona. I'm a little mad about that. Well, if you guys are interested, we'll be talking about some of those Friday and weekend games in another podcast here coming up. We'll be recording that either Thursday night or Friday morning. So just stay tuned with us. Anything else on Tennessee, guys? Beard, you had your hand up there for a sec.
No, I was going to say the whole. I was argue a little bit about the schools when you don't go out of the state to play away games unless it's conference. The biggest thing I think right now that's helping with that is you get local schools, because I use LSU as an example because they've been one of the few schools that's always been on TV. They allow teams like Southeastern Louisiana, South Louisiana Lafayette to be on TV, and I think Tennessee does as well. It's allowing those teams who would normally be on TV or play outside the state to be on TV. So I think it's huge. I do wish they did play some out-of-conference games away that were bigger. I get that, but those non-conference games at home are big for those schools that come in and visit. So
it's a lot easier to say when their teams don't play in the SEC, where you have 7 of the top 10 teams too. I mean, you're going to end up spending less when every single week in and out could be like a potential college game day experience. I mean, it just is what it is. And I mean, when you're playing in warmer weather too, all these northern teams, they don't play at home until the end of April. So they got to travel down and go somewhere.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The only thing is, like, there is ESPN Plus now, and it's getting way better than what it was.
It is.
Still fuck Flow Sports, but we're getting better with it. We're getting better. So
anything but Flow Sports, man.
Yeah, for real. Flem, any closing words on the schedule or anything else? What expectations we have on Tennessee?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's cool for those kids who grew up in Tennessee, who didn't get recruited by Tennessee to get a chance to play inside Lindsey Nelson and kind of play, their childhood team. But expectations wise, I expect them to win the East, compete for the SEC title overall. They have a tough little stretch there. But sky's the limit for Vitale and the boys.
Yeah. So as of right now, currently, it depends on where you're looking. Shop the SEC conference lines, because as I'm currently looking, Tennessee is not the favorite on this book. They're plus 400 to win the SEC tournament, LSU plus 225. But in some places, after the Grant Taylor injury, they changed it to Tennessee being the favorite in the SEC Omaha appearance and national title. But right now, I'm currently looking at best odds for Tennessee, plus 400 to win the SEC. LSU is plus 225. And then best odds for Tennessee to win or to go to Omaha is plus 125. LSU minus 125, just kind of comparing both these two 1 and 2 teams. Yeah. And then LSU plus 450 to win it all. Tennessee plus 700. Again, shop that around because it has changed in the past 2 days with the Grant Taylor news.
Talk about just terrible value though, right? Like, I mean, minus 125 and plus 125 for Omaha. That's like an insult to the game to have lines that low.
I know. So my whole philosophy on it is really, I don't like tying a ton of money down early on in the season and having to wait 4 or 5 months to get it back possibly, or I just know that I lose it. The other thing is injuries. So I don't like to jump on like a preseason favorite that, quite possibly could lose another top starter. I mean, I'm not going to speak any injury into existence, but LSU's already lost one. If they lose another one, they already kind of lack a little bit of SEC experience. That's just an example. And then the other one is a lot of these prices aren't even going to really change once we get a bracket in front of us and we can actually kind of handicap the matchups that they're going to have. The prices are pretty much going to stay the same. If you're seeing a minus 125 for LSU right now, I really don't know if it could get any worse than minus 225 when they get the bracket and there's a couple of mid-majors in their regional, and then the super regional, the 16 seeds, maybe not strong. Roll over the money lines in the tournament to get them in the Omaha. That's my suggestion and what I choose to go with over laying something that's juiced. Let's jump into the number 3 team that we have ranked in the TCE preseason SEC rankings. We have Texas A&M there, guys. Let's jump into Texas A&M. Beard, you have that team previewed. Let's hear about some of the Aggies this year.
So the big question is, can they get back to Omaha? Schlossnagle comes in year one, and I told these guys all year last year, especially because we had them early on in the season to start the season. They were the most pesky, annoying team to deal with, and I expect them to be just like that again because I don't think they're going to be as good. I think they might be a little overrated, in my opinion. They've got 2 tough stretches in their schedule. You got LSU, Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Texas State, Auburn, and then you get Missouri and then Kentucky, and then it goes right into Arkansas, Florida, Bama, Mississippi State. So they've got some real tough stretches. They avoid Georgia, South Carolina, and Vandy, so really not too much that they avoided there. They really got most of the meat of the schedule, and being in the West, that's just how it's going to be. Navigating the SEC West with what is around them is going to be tough. They may regress slightly with run production because they produced 474 last year. That's a lot of runs that you got to get back somehow, and the talent around you at every other school got better. So that's a big thing. You got your big 3 guys is that they didn't really know if they were coming back based on the draft was Trevor Warner, Austin Boast, and Ryan Targott. Big thing for Trevor Warner is staying healthy. It's the biggest question mark for him is staying healthy. Jag Moss, it's his second year at A&M. He transferred in from Arizona State, and he's a preseason All-SEC first team. So that's a huge, guy that you have in your lineup that can maybe help get you through some lulls of the season where the dog days, as they call them, get to you, and then you try and fight and get some of that momentum back as the season gets to the end, like they did last year, basically, where I had them towards the end there. I was telling these guys, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if they won it all. They just got hot, and they were just a difficult team to deal with. So can they do it again? They got a couple guys that can throw in the upper 90s, Chris Cooper and Nathan Detmer. But it's all about developing a second pitch for those guys. And if you don't have a second pitch in this league, everybody's throwing 90 plus. So 90 plus isn't that big a deal anymore. So have your secondary stuff. Can they do it? Can A&M do it? We'll see.
Yeah. So I'll kind of save most of my analysis. We have a couple of segments coming up, and I saved Texas A&M for one of those. Expectations, Fleming and Beav. What do you kind of think Texas A&M is capable of doing, and what's kind of their floor this season?
Man, they're honestly fully capable of doing what they did last year. Schlossnagle is just that kind of coach, man. It's tough to find a guy like him that is able to literally maximize every last bit out of the players that he gets and how much they love playing for that dude. Going back to the TCU days, we, the Spit and Seeds guys, were fortunate enough to interview quite a few of the TCU team on our other podcast, and have been able to connect with them. And man, just the amount of great things they had to say and how the program was left in the way that he left, just speaks volumes to the kind of character that he has. But that Texas A&M team, man, they just grind out at bats. They're going to eat up pitches. They're going to wear down arms and test how deep your bullpen can really get. The more that you can do that later in the season and you start wearing out arms, that's all it takes. That is all it takes.
Yeah, I love that statement. And pesky, the word that Beard used, it's right on, because they'll just foul pitches off and work up starting pitchers' counts, and it's really frustrating.
9-10 pitch bats, man, that was their MO last year.
Yeah, it really is. And as a former college pitcher myself, I wasn't T1. When I say that, just know I wasn't actually as good as these guys, but I just. When you get deeper into the counts and it starts to be double digits on just one guy, you're just like, holy shit, let me just get one over the middle. That way he can just roll it over and I can move on to the next guy. Well, they just keep following it off. And it's just unspeakable how many of those at bats they have. Flem, anything on A&M here?
I was going to say, they kind of remind me of the old SMS Bears team about a decade ago, just real scrappy That's kind of the word that comes to mind. Is they're just going to compete. And we're talking Texas baseball. Like, there's no lack of talent in Texas. So, I mean, they got the horses to make Omaha run. I got them in Omaha. I expect them in Omaha. Expect them to compete LSU for the West. I expect them to compete with Tennessee and LSU for the SEC title. I think they're kind of the new Arkansas.
All right. Moving on to our number 4 team. What's up, B?
I said they got the money.
They do. We've seen that on the football side for sure. All of it tends to blend over in all of these sports. We rank number 4 the defending national champions, the Ole Miss Rebels. I kind of forgot who is on Ole Miss. B, you got that team preview. Tell us about Bieniek's squad here. Is he off? He's now off the hot seat.
Yeah. I tell you what, man. Talk about getting yourself over the hump there. So, and I mean, which honestly was great to see. I mean, super classy guy. A guy that's been able to tough it out in a program that, let's be honest, didn't care about baseball before he got there. Really. I mean, completely changing that program. Granted, it wasn't just him. I mean, the players that are on that team were just absolutely phenomenal, and we'll get into that. But like the betting odds for this team this year, I mean, to take the SEC at plus 750, that's really not bad odds if you're looking for a long-term play to put a bet on for a team like this, knowing what they lost, but also what they're returning. Omaha, I'm not as big of a fan of those numbers at plus 400, which is good for about tied for 14th with everybody else on the lines. And man, to take it all is actually not bad odds at plus 2,000. I mean, that is a little more intriguing to me if I'm going to try to make a longer-term play like that. I do have concerns with this team in particular. When you're trying to replace Dylan DeLucia and Brandon Johnson, who is your just come in and shut the world down closer. And then you lose, literally this mythical figure in Ole Miss history in Tim Elko. He's Paul Bunyan to us. Chopping down trees, man. That dude, hitting jacks on torn ACLs. If they don't build a statue for that guy, then Ole Miss is doing it wrong and they don't deserve baseball anymore. They lost Justin Bench, Kevin Graham, and then, Hayden Dunhurst behind the plate. Quite possibly the best catcher in baseball last year. When you hear those names not being a part of that team anymore, you think of teams like Tennessee and having to replace all of those guys, but you still don't realize how veteran this Ole Miss team still is. You got Jacob Gonzalez, who is, by all accounts, one of the favorites to win the Golden Spikes this year. You want to talk about being able to replace Tim Elko. Look no further than him at shortstop, quite possibly the best shortstop in the game. Maybe Jacob Wilson there out of Grand Canyon has something to say about that. But, it's tough to go against, the quite arguably the best guy in the best conference. You got Kemp Alderman coming back, TJ McCants, Peyton Chatinier, which, let's be honest, who wasn't enamored by the 3 stolen bases to get home there? Just straight comedy when that went down.
Yeah.
Hunter Elliott on the dish. He's just a bona fide superstar. That is no question your ace. But after Hunter Elliott is where those questions arise. You have the horses as far as being able to put up runs and maintain the offensive production that Ole Miss was used to last year. But there's a lot of question marks. They do have some potential answers to it. Grayson Saunier, true freshman coming in, is throwing mid to upper 90s with just some filthy stuff. He got drafted in like the 18th round by the Rangers, but there's not a soul out there that's not saying that he would have been in the top 10 rounds easily, but he was so committed to coming to Ole Miss and making a statement there. He's definitely looking like he could be that Saturday guy for him. Then you got D2 guy Xavier Rivas coming into, has some up stuff, but he's more of a pesky pitcher coming with the lefty, looking more for some movement, trying to draw some guys off. Definitely a make you miss kind of guy. And then, behind the plate, the captain there, replacing Hayden Dunhurst, Calvin Harris is about as close as you could reasonably get. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that should be able to step in and fill the shoes. Obviously, you're not going to be able to replace, just how amazing Dunhurst was on the defensive side. Calvin Harris is still a great defensive catcher, don't get me wrong. But, the dude had 110 at-bats and was hitting 336, and he hit you 2 home runs in the College World Series. You want to talk about a guy stepping up and putting his claim out there to show that he's going to be that guy for you going forward. It's tough to look beyond that. And then you want to talk about some other additions to replace some of those guys. Ethan Groff from Tulane, just absolute filthy. The dude has a 400, 500, 700 slash line at Tulane last year. That's filthy. And Tulane was not a slouch team. You know what I mean? Everybody was talking about Tulane as being one that's going to make a lot of noise. You have Anthony Calarco that comes in, who's going to be filling in over there at first base. He's a 300, 400, 600 slash guy, 13 home runs, had a pretty weak start to his career, but really, really made some statements last year. Obviously, why you finding him on the defending champs now. And then Ethan Legge, who #1 overall JUCO player by a lot of metrics, coming in to fill in there at third base, who was hitting 399. You're just building on that offensive production. If you want to talk about one that's built, if you had to get in just a straight offensive matchup against LSU, they're 2 teams right now that, with Grant Taylor being out for LSU, are built very similarly. It's tough to find a whole lot of differences between those 2 teams. And all honesty, for being the defending national champs and #4 overall in the country, it's almost like Ole Miss is kind of being forgotten about, as bad as that is to say. You know what I mean?
Well, they kind of should. They were terrible last year. They shouldn't have been in the tournament. They got hot at the right time and they won.
They also had the talent, though. They couldn't put things together during the season, and that was because of the pitching, man. They couldn't figure out their rotation. They were mixing up their rotation all the way through, like playing through Tennessee, getting swept there at Swayze.
They could do that again this year, too.
And they very well could. But, look, last year they were #1 overall early in the season and then completely fell out. And like you said, barely made it in. But what it takes are the horses. Recruiting does everything, right? Ole Miss has recruited just about as well as anybody. And that's all you need is one shot. You get hot at the right time. That's all it takes.
Yeah, I remember being so stern about that too. Ole Miss getting in over a couple of the other teams that were left out. I remember Rutgers was on the door, and then the other team that I was actually pretty vocal about was NC State. They went to the championship in the ACC tournament, and Ole Miss lost game 1. Really, I thought there was a better argument there for the Wolfpack, but they got screwed over by the NCAA again. Yeah. So let's jump into the schedule. Do we have anything that really stands out to us here with Ole Miss? In the SEC,
I really like Ole Miss's schedule. Actually, this year, they have that early test against Maryland, granted at home. You're talking a team that was #2 in home runs all of last season. That's returning a lot of production. Don't get me wrong. I think they're probably overrated at the it being 13th in the country right now, but it's proven that they have bats. And if our big question mark about Ole Miss is what their pitching is going to do this year, you want to talk about a trial by fire. That's a great way to do it. Let's see how they react when they face against some of the best bats in the country. What's going to happen there? Ole Miss is going to get to play Louisiana Tech. That's another team that's always just got some healthy bats that can take you long. They always seem to find a way to make some noise as a mid-major. Your away matchups, you're going to end up being at Vandy, at A&M, at Mississippi State, at Bama. So, it's not like they have the craziest away schedule. So, they can definitely sneak away quite a few series this year. And being able to get, LSU and Arkansas at home, Florida at home, and then their other crossovers for the East are Mizzou and UGA. They're set up to have a really good season. I mean, it's there. It's way easier than it was for them last year.
For sure. Totally agree with you there. Let's jump into some of the other guys' expectations. I'll start. I have this team actually third in the SEC West. We'll get in that a little bit. But I thought their schedule was quite favorable for them too. Their offense looks great on paper, and I trust Bieniek with what he did last year, just tinkering with the weekend rotation, that he's going to be able to find some kind of combination that works to get him two wins at home and don't get swept on the road. That's kind of the strategy there. And, I think they end up third in this division. Flem, how about you on Ole Miss here?
I'm not high on Ole Miss. I think they were a one-hit wonder last year. I mean, yeah, they had a nice ranking in the beginning of the season. I feel like they're going to have a similar season this year, kind of flirt right around 500, a little lower 500, kind of middle of the pack. The SEC West is stacked, so I think they got a good Friday night guy who can go out and win the Friday night game, but what happens Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, and then Beard, how about you?
I'll keep it simple. I think they're going to be a good team. Bianco's proven that he can coach, and then finally he proved that he can win it all. So Ole Miss is going to be a good baseball team. They hit the transfer portal well. Jacob Gonzalez can hit. They're going to be fine.
Yeah. So Beav mentioned the odds on Ole Miss. I'll just run back and mention Texas A&M because I think we forgot about those. A&M plus 500 to win the SEC tournament. And then they're plus 250 to make it to Omaha and plus 1750 to win it all. Now we'll jump into our number 5 ranked team in our preseason SEC rankings, and that's the Arkansas Razorbacks. And I have that preview here. They're plus 600 to win the SEC, plus 250 to win or to go to Omaha, and plus 1,300 to win the College World Series. Before I get into any losses from last season, for the second straight year, the Hogs lose their projected ace just weeks before the season. Last year is Peyton Paulette. This year it's Jackson Wiggins. The moral of the story is that doubting Dave Van Horn managing Arkansas is not really a winning strategy, as they appeared in Omaha and they were one game away from the championship series last year. The big losses that come up the middle of the field for the Hogs. In center fielder Braden Webb, shortstop Jalen Battles, second baseman Robert Moore, catcher / rental player Michael Turner. That thing took off last year. DVH again reloaded with additional rental players from the transfer portal. A lot of JUCO guys. A big name third baseman JUCO transfer Caleb Cowley has a big middle of the order bat, and then added in Creighton transfer Jared Wegner. He'll slot into left field as he batted .343 with a 1094 OPS. Granted, it was Big East baseball. We'll see how that transfers in the SEC here. On the pitching side, Arkansas's ace Connor Noland is now gone, entering this year as well. The big pitching addition was JUCO transfer Hunter Holland, who throws in the mid-90s and should develop throughout the year. Losing Wiggins sucks, but the depth of this pitching staff was its strength of Arkansas, and I think the outlook could be quite similar to what last year's was in SEC and in postseason play. So, in specific, keep an eye on Hagen Smith this year. I buried the lead. He's just a wicked sophomore lefty who should step in the ace role after Wiggins' injury. He had a great postseason last year, and then their closer Brady Tiger finished with a 3.82 ERA, 51 strikeouts, 21 walks, and 37.2 innings. They didn't really have designated closer. They kind of went by committee last year. He should step into that main role this year. The key bat for Arkansas is redshirt senior Brady Slavens, who hit 16 bombs last season with a .255 average. He hit 2 homers in Omaha as well as the first ever center field home run in Charles Schwab Field, TD Ameritrade, that park. He had an .855 OPS with 58 RBIs. Let's jump into the Hogs' schedule here real quick. The things that stand out for me are their road trips. You start off with LSU, and that's your first road trip in the SEC. It's a little bit tough, but after that, you have at the end of the season, your final 3 road trips are Georgia, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, who I project to be all kind of middle of the road SEC teams falling within like my 7 and 12 range. So I think that those are pretty winnable. And then you dodge a couple of the good teams out of the West. I mean, it's hard to dodge anybody out of the East. hard to dodge Tennessee after everybody complained about the first schedule release not having Tennessee again this year. So they host the Vols, and I think they avoid Florida, which is a big miss for me. The expectations for Arkansas should be Omaha once again, in my opinion. I don't think they'll win the SEC West over LSU. Personally, I was much higher on the Hogs than our guys. I ranked Arkansas third in the SEC because I value their pitching and I think their staff has incredible depth. But let's hear from some of the guys. Beard, start with you in the West there.
Dave Van Horn, he's been doing it for too long to let something like this kind of derail everything. I mean, you kind of got a blueprint from last year how to kind of figure this deal out. Doesn't hurt that you have a great back end guy. Once again, that seems to be Arkansas's MO. I do see, massive steps back, lost a lot of guys, lost a lot of experience, talent. But they're going to continue to be Arkansas. That's just kind of how they are. It's kind of like A&M with Schlossnagle. Like once a guy's there, a particular coach or whatever, doesn't matter who you plug in, they're going to be a part of that program. And it's going to be Arkansas once again. They're going to be rowdy. They're going to be loud. They're going to talk, even though Van Horn says they don't, whatever he wants to say. I just wish he would kind of be quiet and just do his thing. Like, enjoy your success, man.
Buy into it.
Buy in, yeah. Like it's almost like he doesn't enjoy being there sometimes, and I don't get it.
I feel you there. How about the Tennessee guys?
I mean, I'm not as high on Arkansas as some of these guys are.
That's the wrong guy to ask right there.
I just mentioned Tennessee guys, so I was hoping either one of them might step up. But I see Flem. Yeah, we saw Flem's rankings.
I'm much higher on Arkansas than Flem is over there. He has a bone to pick.
With him.
For his birthday last year, all he wanted was all the smoke from Arkansas fans on Twitter. So he's probably the wrong guy to ask about his take.
I do like Brady Slavens, much like myself. We're both Kansas City Metro prospects, Kansas City kids. So, I do enjoy watching the kids from Kansas City ball out in the SEC. Peyton Stovall. Do what?
What about old Bobby Wieners?
Old Bobby Werns, me and Blue Valley West. What's up? Let's go. It's Peyton Stovall, great kid, great infielder. I'm just not sure. Arkansas struggled last year to put up runs, and I think they're going to fall into the same kind of slump this year, just trying to scratch through runs. I think they're going to struggle offensively more than anything.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and I can see like it's the differing in styles. Is like I had Arkansas 3, you had Arkansas 7, and then you had A&M 3, I had A&M 6. So it's just different ways they handicap ball, and that's why I asked. That's why we got to get different points of view here.
I definitely expect Will McIntyre to fill in really well.
For sure.
With Jackson now being out. Had the opportunity to meet up and chat with Will at the College World Series last year, and great kid. Definitely, I feel like he's probably been a little underutilized at Arkansas in the past, but he's pretty quiet demeanor, seemingly just kind of a funny, goofy kid. But man, I really look for him to take a massive step forward. And after his showing last year in the postseason, you want to talk about Arkansas fans like wholesale backing a guy now. You got to get the sense that fan base is just in love with what that kid brings to the table now.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to the number 6 team in the SEC in our preseason rankings. Vanderbilt. Flem, you had your fellow Tennessee rival. What's up with the Commodores this season?
Yeah, so, Tim Corbin's still doing Tim Corbin things. He recruits really well. They did lose probably their 2 most productive bats last year in Dominique Keegan and Spencer Jones to the draft. But when you think Vanderbilt baseball, man, right now you got to think Enrique Bradfield Jr. Dude is a stolen base just sitting on the bench at all times. The kid is so quick. He covers so much field, so much ground in center field. It's honestly unbelievable to watch him play. Huge fan, leads the SEC in stolen bases like every year. He's going to be, once he gets on base, he's it's almost impossible for him not to score a run every.
He's the single most disruptive player in college baseball.
It's unbelievable. He's so good. But when you think Vanderbilt, you think pitching. Pitching is always going to be their strength. That's how Corbin has built this dynasty. Carter Holton and Devin Futrell, they're going to kind of highlight the rotation for Vanderbilt, I would assume. I believe Maldonado is still kind of closing things out. He's still running around the West Nashville. You got Jack Bolger, Parker Noland. They're both coming back, key pieces to the Vanderbilt team. And then they got a freshman coming in. I'm going to butcher his last name, but his name is Andrew Fleming.
I just learned the pronunciation this morning, so let me pull that up. Keep going though.
He's should be on a minor league team right now. He's a much like a Dylan Cruz type kid, big time prospect. Decided he wanted to come to Vanderbilt and play for Corbin. He's going to be a big time. We'll see where he fits in the rotation if he gets in the starters. But he's an upper 90s guy. And I think he's going to be your future, All-American there at Vanderbilt.
A lot of places are projecting him is the Sunday guy right now.
Okay, so I've seen, I think Carter Holton and Devin Futrell are going to definitely be in your starting rotation. I've seen some other projections where Sam Hilboki, coming off Tommy John, could fill that role. I'm butchering all these names.
Carter, no matter what. Carter is your Friday guy. If you do not have Carter as your Friday starter in your Vanderbilt, then what are you doing?
Yeah, I agree. I found that one from earlier, the freshman. It's Duke Can't Itch, but that's coming from Discord as well. So just beware. It might not totally be true, but that's it for right now.
Slim, if it's Vanderbilt and you can't pronounce it, just call him Doctor.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's cool.
Doctor.
But I'm high on Vanderbilt this year. I think they had a uncharacteristic 22 season. I like them fighting Tennessee for the SEC East. I wouldn't be surprised if you see them in Omaha. Obviously they got to go, I think, to Tennessee. That's kind of their big series. Heck, they got a tough first game Friday night, TCU. I think it's going to tell you a lot about what Vanderbilt's got this year.
Yeah.
Very interested to watch that game. 2 top 10 teams, 2 top 15 teams, depending on what you're looking at. And even that UCLA, series is going to be good too. I know Matt was high on UCLA last year. They got some studs out there. And then obviously, as you run through the SEC gauntlet, the SEC is the SEC. So that Louisville series is sneaky as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then you also have the back-to-back road series here in Alabama, Florida. Both those are pretty middle-ish SEC teams, but anytime you get a back-to-back road, it's pretty tough. And then you also have that midweek road game at Louisville as well. So that was kind of like the pothole that I saw for Vandy. So expectations on the Commodores, guys. I put Vanderbilt a third in the East and 7th overall in the SEC. I think that the pitching is really good. When Bradfield or when he comes back as your leading home run hitter, you've got a little bit of questions on the offense and Enrique. So that's my question with the Commodores right now, and Enrique Bradfield being the leading home run hitter coming back. How about you guys? Beard, start with you.
I mean, Vandy's going to be right there. They're not going to be a team that if they're competing for the SEC East with Tennessee, no one's going to bat an eye. I don't expect them to make some super regression where we expect them towards the end, because they've kind of been a team that nobody's really kind of discussed here in the SEC this year, I would say. And that may be a product of your own success or a byproduct of that, because everyone just expects Corbin to just roll guys out there and dudes. And I think this might be the one year where we saw kind of a chink in the armor where a pitcher left Vanderbilt. and went to. I mean, obviously, my team benefited with Christian Little, but that's not something that has happened in the past. Usually, he kind of holds on to those guys. He's kind of like the Nick Saban of defensive linemen. With pitchers, like they don't go anywhere. They stay there and they develop and they become dudes. So I don't know if that's maybe an early sign of something that we don't know about. Who knows? But I expect Vanderbilt to be just fine. It's Corbin. They're good.
Well, I mean, if any indication about the arms, what happened with Kumar and Leiter and everything, man. I mean, he burned those kids up. I mean, I think that had to have hurt him. I think a lot of kids saw that. Yeah, they're big names and everything, but man, I think those kids took several years off their arms being in that program that year. I mean, Vanderbilt's, honestly, their offensive production worries me. I mean, based on what they have returning outside of Enrique Bradfield right now, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they make it to Omaha. It also wouldn't surprise me if they end up unranked in a 500 team at the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll talk about like player of the year stuff at the end here, but this is a guy that, like, if Vandy is in the conversation at some point during the year, at least like in the top of the SEC East, challenging Tennessee, or a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament, Enrique Bradfield's going to have his name in the conversation for that award.
Oh, no question.
So,
I mean, the issue here, the top teams, from what we've discussed, is at least all of the other top teams, when they're replacing guys, they're replacing them with verified transfers that have put up numbers. Right now, Vandy is trying to replace guys with guys that don't have anything.
Yep. Number 7, we have ranked the Florida Gators. So I was in charge of doing the team preview here with the Gators. SEC to win it, they're plus 500. To go to Omaha, they're plus 200. And to win the College World Series, they're plus 1,300. Did we touch on Vandy real
we
quick?
Did not.
I'll mention that real quick. Vandy plus 750 to win the SEC tournament. They are, got to pull up Vandy, plus 300 to make it to Omaha, and then plus 1750 to win it all. So back to Florida. Before I dive into this team preview, for those who don't know, I'm like a diehard Michigan fan. I got the Hutch jersey in my background, but I went to I went to college in Pittsburgh. But if there was, I played ball there. But if there was one SEC team that I kind of associated myself with, it's the Florida Gators, and it's because my aunt played basketball there. I get a ton of shit probably from these guys throughout the year, being a Gators fan, because I'm not located in Florida, but they do us a disservice by not showing up to the dang ballpark and making it a good home crowd. But I'll jump into the preview. Florida doesn't lose too many key pieces from a year ago in my eyes. Most notably, their ace, Hunter Barco. He went down to Tommy John surgery during the year last year. He's not going to be available. The Gators lost Judd Fabian to the draft, but in my eyes, he didn't really live up to the crazy expectations that were placed on him. The strength of this team is 100% their top 4 starters in the pitching rotation. I honestly think that the quartet of Hurston Waldrop, Brandon Sproat, Pierce Capola, and Brandon Neely will be a top 3 SEC rotation and a top 5 national rotation. Call me crazy, but we all know what Wyatt Langford's going to do. He's a 5-tool center fielder in the nation. Like, he's top 5 MLB draft pick. He's going to be one of the most talked about outfielders in the nation. The guy that I think a lot of people might be sleeping on in this batting lineup is Jack Caglianone. He'll either be the DH or the first baseman. In the middle of the SEC play last year, that's when he made his first appearance. After coming off of Tommy John surgery, he finished the season with an 887 OPS, 288 average, and 7 tanks, and that was just in a half a season, all in SEC play. I think Cags might be able to hit 20 this year, and he's going to be a key piece in this offense, because that was somewhat of the question last year, is that when Barco wasn't on the mound to win games for you last year, the offense didn't really fix that for you. So now let's jump into the schedule for the Gators here. And my school is terrible with the schedule. They want to put out an entire calendar when they do it. So there's 3 different graphics. I wasn't going to put all 3 of them onto the YouTube portion of this. Again, the college experience on YouTube, but I'll walk through the ones that aren't on this graphic. Weekend number 3, they have Miami, Florida, the in-state rival, March 3rd to the 5th. The first SEC weekend, they're playing Alabama, 17th through the 19th. Then they have a midweek against the rival Florida State on the 21st. Second SEC series is Ole Miss, 24th through the 26th. Midweek again against Florida State. And then they play their third SEC weekend series against Auburn, the 31st through the 2nd. So for me, I think that they get a lot of tough road matchups. You're going to Tennessee, you're going to South Carolina, who I think is going to be all right this year, and you're going to Texas A&M. They're fighting an uphill battle there with the schedule. Jumping into the expectations for the Gators this year, I actually have higher than normal when talking about my own teams. I think it's an Omaha or bust caliber squad. I don't think they're in the running to win the SEC. I think that there's some much better teams in the SEC. But when you're talking about an 8-team field or a 64-team field narrowing down to 8, I think they have a really good chance to get into Omaha this year. I personally ranked Florida 4th in the SEC, which was much higher than the Sunflower Seed Spitters here. Let's see if they can spit some heat and reasonably call me a little bit crazy for this take here on the Gators.
Man, Florida's issues, I think it's more of a clubhouse thing. There's nobody that's going to argue they have all the talent in the world there. There's something not right with that organization right now. I don't know what it is, but it's blatantly obvious to everybody. The fans don't care about the program. The team seemed just disinterested last year. I mean, I don't know what it is. And there have been rumblings and stuff everywhere. And I mean, through a lot of different media outlets about something toxic going on in that program. Now, I don't necessarily think that's an indictment on the coach. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I do think that is a phenomenal program. But until I actually see it on the field, I am going to continually say that they are overrated and they do not deserve it because I don't trust them.
Yeah, we got a section coming up on there. Pretty strong words from Beav. Maybe Florida's popping up on one of them. Flem or Beard, any other words on Florida here?
I was going to say I agree with Beav about the there's a clubhouse issue. So I don't think everybody can maybe get shopped around like Sullivan did right before LSU hired Jay Johnson. And maybe that be okay if you come back where you know, like a Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, he seems to always get an extension or whatever, and it's okay. It's okay. Nobody's hurt. Nobody, no harm, no foul. They have not been the same since Sullivan got kind of shopped around a little bit. And they're just, I mean, they built what they spent $60 million on a baseball facility,
a new
and
ballpark.
they can't get anybody there.
Yep.
And we're talking about a Florida team who won a national championship in 2017.
They were one of the best programs in the 2010s.
Yeah. The other thing for Florida is that
consistently
is the plate discipline, man. I mean, they strike out far more than they get walked, man. And it's the plate discipline is everything. Yeah, they hit a lot of home runs and stuff like that, but that's because they are swinging for the fences on literally every single pitch, man. Something's got to happen.
You're not wrong, and I don't like that approach, but it's the way that the baseball game is being played nowadays. You see it in the MLB. It's hard to tell kids or teach kids to do something opposite of what's working right now in the MLB. That's my stance on that. Anyway, I just really, really love the pitching. I'm buying all of it, and all of their starting, and they've got depth there.
The addition of Hurston is that can't be understated. I mean, that's the only thing that really makes me pause about my so-called hot take on Florida is the addition of that kid is, I mean, to me, might be the best addition in college baseball for a staff this year.
It might. Flem, anything on the Gators?
I like Florida. I'm not sure what Brandon's smoking. You know, I'm buying pitching with you, and I like Wyatt Langford in the middle of that lineup. Kid is a stud. I think he's going to be in your Golden Spikes, talk for the whole season. There's no short of talent in Florida. I like Florida State. I like all those. I like all the Florida schools in baseball. I mean, they're all good.
Yeah, so 14-team conference. We're through 7. We'll try to pick it up a little bit here for the listeners. But moving on to the number 8 team we have is South Carolina. South Carolina goes to Beav. What do we got on the Gamecocks this year?
Yeah, so odds to win the SEC plus 4,000. Odds to make it to Omaha plus 1,250. Odds to win it all plus 7,500. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that think that South Carolina can be dangerous, and they definitely can be. So, I mean, if you're a betting person, the plus 4,000 odds to win the SEC are pretty favorable. I mean, that would definitely be something that may entice me a little bit because, I mean, we'll talk about it ad nauseum, but pitching does mean a lot in this game, especially in the college game. But outside of the starting rotation for South Carolina, man, this team is entirely different. I mean, there's 5 transfers right now that are projected in the starting lineup. I mean, this team was worst in the league last season with 58 home runs. And Noah, to your point, in the head nods that were going around, I mean, everybody's swinging for the fences. They were included, but they weren't touching the ball.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the plate discipline there was just absolutely abysmal. They only had 2 guys on the entire team hit double-digit home runs last year, and Andrew Eister and Josiah Seitler, both of which are not with the team anymore, so you're losing nearly half of your production at the plate. I mean, it's not exactly a glowing thing for them at the moment. But I will say, to their credit, the additions that they have brought on, and Gavin Casas there at first base came from Vandy. Granted, he played extremely sparingly at Vandy, but any talent that ends up going to Vandy, Beard, to your point, they just don't leave. So for anybody, especially at that important of a position to head out, a pretty big deal. And obviously he's got a lot of talent if he's being recruited for Vandy. Will McGillis coming in there at second base, transfer from Southern Miss. I mean, dude hit 16 home runs and had 51 RBIs last year. I mean, that's some stellar production. You're already better off than any of the guys you had up at the dish last year for South Carolina. Left field had Caleb Denny coming in from Oral Roberts. Guy hit 331 last season, 11 home runs, 57 RBIs. Right field, Dylan Brewer from Clemson, not as strong on the bat, but a good defensive presence, only hitting 206 last year. So, I mean, you better hope the juice is worth the squeeze on one like that, especially when you're stealing them from a rival. DH realistically is going to be Jacob Compton from Memphis, guy hitting 291 last season, 11 home runs, 56 RBIs. If there's one thing that you can gather from what South Carolina has added was run production. I mean, 50 plus RBIs for any guy is absolutely stellar, and they added 3 guys from D1 baseball that produced at a really high level. So definitely some things to really look forward to there. Do they produce against SEC starting rotations? That's definitely something to work out. Now, I included him as kind of like an added player since he didn't play last year as well, but realistically, who's going to end up being your Sunday guy is going to be Jack Mahoney, who was out last season with injury. I mean, definitely a great guy that should be able to step in, had some really good flashes, but you always wonder how that injury is going to be able to come back in your first season, especially playing in the SEC. Then you got a freshman coming in that extremely highly touted, who realistically is going to be your midweek guy for right now in Eli Jersenbeck. Now, there's one, Jonathan French coming in as well from transfer from Clemson, who's fighting for some time to see if he's going to end up playing some catcher. If not, you could reasonably see him step in at potential DH or fill in a couple other positions. Guy has some unique tools, but he's a little bit better of a bat at the catcher spot, just probably a little bit weaker at defense. Hit 8 home runs and 130 at bats for Clemson last year. year. But obviously, if you're talking South Carolina, you're always going to come back to the starting rotation, and you have an absolute stud for an ace and Will Sanders. Noah Hall coming in for your Saturday night guy, just another stud. Your closer is probably going to be Cade Austin, but the guy that you're really, really hoping to step up that was a tried and true for you is going to be Braylon Wimmer, who's moving over to shortstop for this season. I mean, a 3.12 guy, 13 stolen bases, 7 home runs. I mean, the guy's just getting bags for you. Now, I mean, schedule-wise, or I guess really how it could play out, I still really only see like the top end for South Carolina is potentially being a regional host. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in them being able to be a top 8 or anything like that, hosting a super. But I mean, if the bottom falls out, I don't see a whole lot of depth with this team. Like you said, we said earlier with some teams, as far as pitching, you're realistically probably one good injury away from having a pretty rough go at this season that you could find yourself below 500 running the gamut in the SEC.
Yeah. I personally like this squad quite a bit. I see a lot of potential in that weekend rotation. I have some analysis packed away for the back half of the episode. Flem or Beard, anything on the Gamecocks here that you want to add?
Pitching stays healthy, they should be fine. It's a make or break season for Kingston.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll second that. As Will Sanders goes, they will go.
All right. So our number 9th ranked team is the Georgia Bulldogs. A little bit surprising there, but I felt like all of us, a lot of talk around, maybe Alabama or Auburn or Mississippi State, possibly being in like a top 25 snub. And we have Georgia over all of them. And I love it because personally I had them up there as well. The Georgia preview belongs to Beard. Let's jump into the Bulldogs here.
So the Bulldogs' biggest thing is it's make or break with the experience that they have and the pitching. The pitching can be really top end because of the velocity that's there, but if they don't develop some secondary pitches or some consistency and missing some bats that Coleman Wilkes didn't miss last year, then they're going to struggle. But if they can, because everybody knows about Jaden Woods, everybody knows about the fastball, develop the slider, develop a secondary pitch, and you'll be better. Like I said, they've got an experienced lineup: Cole Wagner, Connor Tate, Collins, Ben Anderson, Gonzalez at the catching position, which nobody's mentioned it yet, is one of the most important positions in college baseball, especially SEC. If you have a catcher that you can rely on and essentially forget about he's there, that's huge. Kind of a fun fact about Georgia, they got 2 25-year-olds when the season starts, Ben Anderson and Connor Tate. That's kind of funny in today's college baseball, 25 years old. He's
for the course for all their athletic squads right now, isn't it?
Yeah,
for sure. Their schedule, they avoid Bama, Mississippi State, and A&M. That's not, they don't miss much there. They've got an unforgiving conference schedule, I would agree. I would say, at home, they got LSU, Tennessee, and Arkansas. And then they go to Auburn, to Vandy, to Florida, and then to Ole Miss. Their toughest stretch, I think, is right in the middle. It's at Florida, Arkansas at home, and then at Ole Miss. The only reason I don't think the back end is that bad because you get to split it up with Missouri between UT and LSU, which is still tough on its own. But that Florida, Arkansas, Ole Miss stretch could be really tough and could maybe break this team before the conference tournament even starts. So I don't expect Georgia to figure it all the way out at pitching, but there's got to be a little bit of improvement from last year. So I think our middle of the ranking right is kind of right where they need to be, towards the end. But I don't see them taking a huge step. They'll be competitive, but they're not going to be right there with everybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I was one that was kind of high in buying on Georgia last year, and they just didn't really live up to expectation. The big thing with Georgia is they haven't stayed healthy in the past 3 seasons. They have all this experience, and in one corner, some may say experience in college baseball when you're talking about 5th year or redshirt seniors is they weren't good enough to get drafted. The other thing is maybe they do like the college game. That's kind of the viewpoint on Georgia here. I had Georgia 10th in the SEC, and it was 5th in the East. How about some of the Vols' point of views? Beav or Flem, you want to step in here?
I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia could finish anywhere between 2nd to 5th or 6th in the East. There's talent. There's a lot of talent in the Atlanta area, which is most of their roster hails from. Jaden Woods is a left-handed stud, 97 from the southpaw. Just electric stuff. You got, they played Tennessee really tough last year here in Knoxville, and I think Tennessee's got to go on the road to them this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia wins that series, honestly.
Really? Well, let's hear from the other Vol who ranked Georgia 12th. How about that, Beef?
Yeah. It's the pitching, really. Outside of Jaden, I just don't see what else is there. The bats are still realistically pretty unproven. I do think there's a lot of potential with Georgia, and I do think that they probably have one of the highest differentials between ceiling and floor in the conference, because I think if the pieces come together and some of these freshman arms come in and light it up like what they're expected to do. They have 2 freshmen coming in that are already pitching in the upper 90s. We're talking a potential similar situation to like what happened with Tennessee's bullpen with, Burns and Beam and stuff coming in and completely changing a program. They added Sebastian Murillo from Long Beach State, which, obviously the Dirtbags were a great program last year and made a lot of headlines. Getting anybody from there, especially when you're coming to play the most athletic spot on the field there in shortstop. You got Charlie Condon.
That's the name people need to listen for.
Yeah. Who is redshirted last year, but just tore it up in the Northwoods League. And so, there's definitely there.
Exit velos this fall of 116 plus pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So
I find
look for some big time home runs.
Arms is my only thing. I find it hard to trust fresh arms.
For sure. Moving down to number 10, we had the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, the 2021 national champions, and this one belongs to Flem. Tell us about MSU here.
Your 2021 national champions, who finished almost dead last, or I think they did finish dead last in the last year. What a fall from grace.
Yeah.
Such a rich tradition in baseball. They probably have, the mecca of stadiums down there. Lost some key pieces last year. Lost the captain, Logan Tanner. He's no longer there. Brad Cumbest, Cameron James, and RJ Yeager. So you got, 4 of your top 5 bats are no longer with the team anymore. They did hit the transfer portal really, really hard. They probably have one of the top 5 recruiting classes as far as the transfer portal. Brought kids in from all over the place. Are returning Hunter Hines, Luke Hancock, Kellen Clark. So they do have a good nucleus of returning players that have been in the program a long time and won a national championship. You know what it takes. Colton Ledbetter, he's probably going to be a name to really listen for. Outfielder comes in from Sanford, was second team all conference, hit 318, 16 home runs, got some pop in that bat. Probably a top 50 prospect for this coming year. Have a kid from Memphis, Landon Gartman, was 2022 newcomer of the year as far as pitching. First team all AAC. Had some other good time transfers, including Aaron Nixon, right-hand pitcher from Texas. But they're Mississippi State's going to be a weird team. I'm not sure. They could be really good or they could be really bad. I'm not sure there's any in between there. Casey Hunt's probably going to be your Friday night starter. Was kind of projected to be the ace last year, got hurt. He's back. And then you also got to look out for freshman, one of the top prospects, Dakota Jordan. Probably see some playing time in the outfield. But as far as scheduling goes for Mississippi State, they got a tough series with Arizona State off the bat. They actually played Long Beach State, I believe, at home last year, and I think they lost that series, and that kind of set the table for them on their 2022 season. I think that Arizona State series is going to be a very, very telling series for how their season is going to get kicked off. When that series, things fall into place. Beatty, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Arkansas, LSU, A&M. I mean, obviously, those are all going to be a really tough series, all going to be top, 15, 20 teams. But if they can kind of get the ball rolling, they're still only 2 years removed from a national championship. So they got to steady the ship, so to speak.
Yeah, I was picking up the hot and cold vibes with you as well. Like that, they could really surprise some people, or they could really fall back into the cellar like they were last year.
Yeah.
I had Mississippi State 12th. Kind of leaned more towards like the lack of pitching again. Really kind of nerves me this year. They need some guys to step up. For me personally, the highest. I mean, all three of you ranked Mississippi State at 9, so I guess my average kind of brought down the Bulldogs. Anything else on Mississippi State from either Beav or Beers?
I was just going to say it's Mississippi State. They've got a program. They've got the facilities. They've got the coaching. I can say this about a lot of programs that we're not really so high on or whatever, because the SEC has elevated itself to such a high level that kind of middle of the road is, okay, well, I could see them doing that, even if they're having a tough season, because I think last year was an anomaly. I think Mississippi State will be fine. Yeah. I think playing in the SEC West is what makes maybe taking that next step after a really tough season, especially coming into this year, is going to be what makes it tough. So we'll see.
Anything additional, Beav?
Nah, I mean, that pretty well covers it.
All right, so we jump on over to the Tigers of Auburn, who rank 11th. And again, I think I forgot to plug some gambling odds for Mississippi State there. Plus 1,300 to win the SEC. Got to do the Control F to pull them up here down a little bit further. 500 for Omaha. And then we have plus 5,000 to win it all. And then for Auburn, they're 1,500 to win the SEC. They are plus 500 to go to Omaha and plus 5,000 to win it all. Head coach Butch Thompson's Auburn team is getting overlooked once again after it last season, where they made their second College World Series appearance in the last 3 tournaments. What's the haps here? So for starters, Auburn loses Golden Spikes finalist Sonny DeShera and 2 other starting infielders, in addition to taking big losses on the pitching side in their ace Hayden Mullins and bullpen go-tos Carson Skipper, Mason Bennett, and closer Blake Berhalter. There are a lot of holes to fill in this 2023 Tigers squad. There is one guy on this year's team that appeared in both College World Series years, and that's Kaysen Howell. Solid bat at the top of the order. He's kind of like leads the SEC, I guess, in annoying at bats if you're not counting the Texas A&M team, sure. So they also return the middle of the lineup bats and Bobby Pierce and Cole Foster from last year, along with catcher Nate LaRue, who should lead the relatively inexperienced pitching staff pretty well. Auburn also returns their best starting pitcher from the second half of the season, Joseph Gonzalez. He should be the star of this team. He finished 7-4 last year with a 3.22 ERA. I'm hearing a little bit of vibration after me. I don't know if that's me or somebody else's mic, but jumping into the schedule here, they actually have a pretty clean graphic. So shout out to their social media team. You can view it on YouTube at the College Experience. This team has 3 tough road trips and one that I think could be sleeper tough with at South Carolina. They go to Arkansas, they go to Florida, they go to South Carolina, and they go to Ole Miss. and they host LSU, Texas A&M as the two of our top 3 teams. And then they host Georgia, Mississippi State, and Missouri as well. I really don't think they got the benefit of the draw here in the scheduling, and that's one factor that put them pretty low for us overall. Honestly, the bar for Auburn should be set to finish in the top 5 of the SEC West and or make the NCAA tournament. I've got them ranked in the conference, which was much higher than the rest of the guys, but I think they have enough experience returning in order to make the argument that they're a top 10 SEC team and they won't finish in the cellar of the West. All 3 of you guys had Auburn at 11. Somebody want to step up and offer a little bit more analysis and maybe on the negatives?
I'll take it real quick. I think we all are probably believing that Auburn relied too much on Sonny DeShera last year, and you don't even replace him with anything close to that. So where are you gonna get that from? But I will say this on a sidebar and a great note for Auburn: the new uniforms that they came out with this year, outstanding. Maybe look good, maybe play good this year, boys. Outstanding uniforms.
Love it. So number 12, we have Alabama. Looking at my list here, Alabama belongs to Beav. What do we got on the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, so Alabama plus 3,000 to win the SEC, plus 1,250 to Omaha, plus 7,500 to win it all. Man, the first look at Alabama, it's just a veteran team. I mean, they returned 7 of 9 starters and their top 4 rotation. Realistically, they should have one of the better rotations in the SEC. Defense for this team has been the name of the game. I mean, in the major issue, especially going back to last season, was they just couldn't put any runs on the board, man. I mean, they were 201st in scoring at 5.8 runs per game. I mean, their on-base percentage was .362 at 195th. I mean, they weren't much higher than South Carolina in home runs in only 62, so only 4 more. But, man, the pitching was pretty solid. WHIP was 135 at 27th in the country. Defense-wise, fielding percentage was .981, good for 11th in the country. I mean, was realistically pretty stellar in the field. Now, fortunately for them, they're not losing a whole lot, so you got a good opportunity for growth. However, the one loss that they did you could have was arguably the heart and soul of the team in Zane Denton, who's now gone to your border rival in Tennessee. And I mean, out of those 62, Zane's 13 home runs and 48 RBIs leading the team in both. They had 62 home runs and 310 RBIs. So, I mean, you're losing a massive amount of production with one guy. But some additions, we were talking about Tennessee Tech earlier and how good baseball is at a lot of levels in the state of Tennessee that most people don't realize. Alabama went in and pulled 2 top guys from Tennessee Tech and Ed Johnson, who's realistically replacing Zane Denton there at third base. Hit .367 and 14 home runs and 44 RBIs for Tennessee Tech last year. The other guy from Tennessee Tech who's got a great shot at being DH this year was Ryan Gardino, 16 home runs in only 47 games last year. He's also was the pick for probably best week overall last season. Guy hit 7 home runs in 1 week and 17 at bats, 10 hits. I mean, just freaking destroying the baseball. Then when you come into add, I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, you talk about the rotation. They're adding in quite possibly one of the best freshman pitchers in the league in Riley Quick, just an absolute mammoth on the mound. The guy's 6'6", 260 pounds, already pushing upper 90s with a fastball, great sinking fastball, tremendous slider, really good movement on the ball. This is a team where some of your numbers, if everything goes right and the offense picks up, do you sneak in, take a few, and get lucky in the SEC tournament? If that's the kind of route you're thinking and we put this much emphasis on pitching, plus 3,000 is probably fair odds to put something on to win the SEC. Crossover for the schedule. They're playing Florida, Mizzou, Vandy. So, I mean, what you got away at Florida, at Archie, at Mizzou, at LSU, and at A&M. So, I mean, there's definitely some tough matchups there, but it's also not something that is insurmountable for a team like that. I'd say realistically, probably tops for them is hosting a regional, though. Bottom could potentially fall out and be another 500 team.
Shit, I was on mute. Shout out to you for bringing up Archie. I know they love that. But shout out to Alabama's social team for only releasing a graphic of the non-conference schedule. So that's all we got for the YouTube portion. And again, this is like the back half, so they're really long shots. And we'll keep the analysis somewhat short for the final two. All of us ranked both Kentucky 13 and Missouri 14. The honor of covering Kentucky goes to Beav as well. So you want to jump? Yeah, you want to jump back into it with the Wildcats here?
Yeah, man. Honestly, what can you really say about this team? Eastern Kentucky has better odds to win the SEC than Kentucky does. But no, really, though, Eastern Kentucky has better odds to make it to Omaha and win the national championship than Kentucky does. For a team in the SEC, that's absolutely terrible. I get that Kentucky lost everything. I mean, John Thrasher, Ryan Ritter, Chase Estep. They brought in 12 total transfers for the 14th ranked transfer class. They had 9 hitters with over 100 bats, and they are all gone, and they lost their top 3 pitchers. So, I mean, realistically, trying to cover all these players would take longer than what we already covered for all the teams. But most notably, their Friday guy is probably going to be this kid, Logan Martin. He was the D3 pitcher of the year, came out of Sewanee, University of the South.
Hey, Sewanee.
And then Magdiel Cotto, transfer from South Carolina in previous year. Spent a year in the system last year. Big arm, just not a lot of control. And then Ryan Hagenow probably rounding out the other rotation, maybe in fighting Austin Strickland there. Seth Chavez, transfer from ETSU, is probably going to end up being the closer. And then you just fill in a bunch of stuff from there. Devin Burks behind the plate is going to be one of the go-to guys for them. Hunter Gilliam over there at first base, transfer from Longwood. Was first team Big South last year. Great bat. Grant Smith had a big season last year for Incarnate Word, who's going to be filling in for shortstop there. 16 home runs, 87 RBIs. James McCoy is one that's being touted as really stepping up from an in-house guy. Hit 302 in the Northwoods League. But then the 2 biggest names I would say that are probably being thrown around are Kendall Ewell, who's going to be there in left field, transfer from who disrespectfully mentioned just a little bit ago from Eastern Kentucky. But 14 home runs, was first team A-Sun, hit 337. And then Ryan Waldschmidt, transfer from Charleston Southern, is going to be starting in center field, probably their leadoff guy. Just had an absolutely ridiculous season for Charleston Southern last year. 36 walks, only 26 strikeouts, 18 stolen bases, batting .310 and hitting 9 home runs. There's a lot to be desired with the team. We'll see how it all shakes out. Bringing in that many transfer guys rarely spells success, though.
Yeah, for sure. It was a tough handicap with all of the transfers, and I found it funny that you threw some shade at Eastern Kentucky because, I mean, 2 of their better players actually transferred to Kentucky. And then I'll round it out quickly with number 14th overall ranked team that we had was Missouri. Going to speed it up a little bit because, the biggest weakness for Missouri here is being in the Southeastern Conference. They lose 4 bats from their starting lineup a year ago. And their strikeout leading pitcher, Spencer Miles, is also gone. Their biggest impact newcomer is going to be Chandler Murphy. He's a transfer from Arizona who posted a 9.73 ERA a year ago. Murphy is projected to be the Tigers' Friday night guy. So some bright spots for Mizzou came in the form of they come in the form of Luke Mann, their third baseman, and Trevor Austin, an outfielder who's the 30th ranked MLB prospect for the 2023 draft by D1 Baseball. Mann is a power hitting lefty who blasted 17 home runs last season. It's hard to place any expectations on a team that all four of us ranked 14th in the SEC. The goal for them is like to make it known to the public. They're trying to make the NCAA tournament, but inside closed doors, head coach Steve Beezer's goal should be to finish at least with an over 500 overall record. Again, this year they did it last year, and also finish above Kentucky in the SEC East. That way you can give yourself a chance to play in Hoover this year. Reasonable goals, right?
I would argue another reasonable goal should be to not allow any run rules, since they're allowing that this year.
Yeah.
I really think that would be a huge goal for a team like that, or any team that may be at the back half of their conference is like, don't allow a run rule, man.
Play 9 innings.
Play 9 innings.
I think the biggest thing for Missouri is they really screwed up a couple of years ago letting Vitello out of there. Vitello's a Missouri grad.
Yeah.
And also Dave Van Horn and Tony Vitello recruit the Kansas City metro area a ton. There's a lot of talent right there in that little corridor, but it all heads south or southeast to Tennessee.
Yeah.
You can go check those Arkansas and Tennessee rosters the last couple of years. You're going to see at least 1 or 2 kids on there from Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, shout out to you and your Chiefs as well, by the way.
I appreciate that. Shout out to Tennessee beating Alabama tonight. Let's go.
Nice win for them. Did they cover?
They did. Won by 8.
They did.
Awesome. So we're not just a gambling podcast. We like to have a little bit of fun and then give some analysis and maybe some other predictions. And who knows, maybe there's odds offered on this later down the road. We want to touch on some of the awards, and then we'll do a dark horse SEC team and an overrated SEC team. So let's start with SEC Pitcher of the Year. Let's have a little bit of fun, try to project something.
I think we can go ahead and move on. We all know how this is going to shake out. That's
Dolander. It's Dolander.
That's about the easiest thing that there's ever been. Put all your money on it.
So interestingly enough, I actually used that as an angle to go somewhere else. I think the competition for SEC Pitcher of the Year will mainly be found in the Tennessee's weekend rotation. I added very few outside names outside of the volunteer staff into this conversation. I'm going down the board a little bit, though, and I'm going to project Drew Beam as my SEC Pitcher of the Year. I think that the pressure of the expectations on Dolander might play a little bit of a role, and we didn't see Beam play the full season last year or start every weekend last year as Tidwell jumped in the second half. He's going to be in the top 3 in the weekend. He's going to get a ton of innings this year, more than he did last year. As Flem also detailed that it was a little bit of arm soreness in the back half, but he should rack up more innings, which means more strikeouts for him. And he had a 180 opponent's batting average last year. I think Drew Beam is a nice little outside shot to an SEC Pitcher of the Year.
Don't sleep on Will Sanders either, man.
For sure.
That dude's a stud.
For sure.
So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys that could step in that role. I mean, if we really wanted to dig into it, you could talk, a Brandon Sproat or a Hurston Waldrop if Florida is able to actually do what I don't think they can. I mean, Hurston would be a guy that I would really throw in there. Me, personally, I would probably pick over Brandon Sproat, but and Beam, that's a great one. I mean, if you end up in a situation, say where Tennessee's split the weekend so far going into Sunday and Beam gets a lot of win clinching series, then, I mean, I think that's going to weigh heavily in a lot of decisions.
An outside shot at this would be somebody on one of my teams that he would have to make a significant improvement. But Jaden Woods has the ability and the talent to take that home. It's just
– it depends what his role is. Is he going to be starter? Is he going to be –
everything I saw was Friday night.
Okay. Because he came in like a relief, kind of the
Yeah.
winning
He's
last
Friday
year.
night. They've got
He wants to be the starter, but let's be honest. If you could get him in a role where it was like the Kevin Kopps role, that dude would absolutely crush it. I mean, if I'm Georgia, I want to have that dude in the game as much as humanly possible. And if he's in that role, I can get him in twice a weekend.
Georgia will roll out the tallest, possibly, or overall biggest pitchers that you'll see this year.
100%. I agree with you there. Do you guys hear like a little bit of vibration, or is it just
There's
me
a little
like,
bit of something.
going?
It's something.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe for the rest of the pod, just put yourself on mute if you're not talking. I don't know what's going on there, but SEC Player of the Year, Beard. You didn't really have too much input because it was mostly chalk from you three. But do you have a guy, SEC Player of the Year, maybe from your team, or who's your favorite to win the award?
So the easy answer is Dylan Cruz. So let's take him out.
Okay.
A couple of his teammates, I think, could. A Trey Morgan, a Tommy White. I think Tommy White's easy to say, but he's going into an even better lineup, and he set the record last year for a freshman NCAA record. He's going to have guys around him that can hit. He could even do more damage this year. So there's a possibility there. I think his defense might hinder that a touch.
Might.
But that's why I give it to Trey Morgan, because if you're not going to go Dylan Cruz, give me Trey Morgan, give me Tommy White. Of course, that's easy with LSU, but you could go Florida Wyatt Langford as well.
All right, Flem, you were shaking your head there. What's up here?
I was going to say, give me Wyatt Langford. He's not going to have the competition around him.
That's fair.
He's gonna collect more stats.
Yeah, I'll buy it too, because I mean, if Florida is somewhat in contention, the lineup is the reason that it wouldn't be, and Langford is the easy guy to point to in the offense of why it could be.
Don't sleep on Jacob Gonzalez, Maui Ahuna stepping into a new role with Tennessee, and I mean, I know he's utility and everything like that, but man, Paul Skeens, he's going to mean. Arguably, he probably means more to that team than anybody else in the SEC.
If you want to pose it this way, he's like, how much hitting is he going to do, Beard?
That's a $1 million question, because where are you gonna hit him? He might hit for himself as a pitcher, which would be interesting to see. But it's gonna be when he's not pitching. Who are you going to supplement him for? Is he going to be your DH? Because is Tommy White going to play third base all the time? Is Gavin Dugas going to show up? Is Cade Below? So it's almost an embarrassment, or it's one of those things. It's like if you're Jay Johnson, it's like, this is tough, especially if they all end up hitting.
It is, but let's be honest, a bat like that, you can't afford to not have in the lineup. You find somebody else to replace. That's not a bat that you keep out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So that could up his value here in the SEC Player of the Year. But it's something that, like, I don't know how many at bats he's going to get, and I'm going to a guy that Beard mentioned, and last year's listeners know where I'm going with this prediction. I absolutely geeked over Tommy the Tank Engine White last year. I loved him not only because of all the tanks that he hit, but I loved his approach at the plate. He wasn't afraid to take the ball the other way, and so many homers and doubles in that right center gap. Absolutely loved it, and I think he's going to like the box. Yes, the SEC has better pitching, but than the ACC, but I don't have any questions with Tommy White being able to adjust and properly protect Dylan Cruz in this LSU batting lineup. So, like Beard said, there's going to be a ton of opportunities for him. Let's jump into our dark horse SEC team. Anybody want to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, I was gonna say Auburn or Georgia, only because I think Butch Thompson is a heck of a coach. I think he is a psycho to look at, and I don't want to be in a room with him and have a conversation. But I think the dude's a heck of a coach. So give me Auburn. I'll take Auburn over Georgia, because Georgia's pitching is just.
I got to go Bama. I mean, top four starting rotation all back, and then you add in a closer like Riley Quick, who's expected to do that much. You're not stressing out your freshmen because you have guys that are just built different there at pitching already. It's just whether or not the offense can catch up, and it's tough to be any worse in offense than what they already were. So,
yeah, I went Auburn for mainly the same reasons that Beer did. Flem, did you go somewhere else?
I was going to go with Auburn only because last year I thought they were going to be terrible. in our preseason, kind of, and they made it to Omaha. So whatever, I'm just gonna ride that wave until it's done.
All right, and then we're gonna jump into the overrated section of the podcast, where I think this one's gonna be a little bit fun.
It's
first, Flem's going LSU. Flem, you want to have the floor, or are you just
No,
putting it
I'm-
out there?
That's a joke. The LSU is not overrated.
Yep, properly rated.
Yeah. I mean, I can lead off here. I was bullishly out on this team last year, and I seem like the only one in the world that is pulling the plug on him again this year, and it's Texas A&M, guys. Jim
Agreed.
Schlossnagle, he's a hell of a coach, and the lineup might be one of the top 3 in the country, maybe. They return a lot. They only lose 2 starters from last year. But I bet on pitching and defense, and that's what I value most in the game of baseball, and Texas A&M has none of it. Nathan Detmer is the only exception, really, and he had a 4.96 ERA a year ago. Our composite rankings in the coaches poll have the Aggies second in the SEC West, and I think that's a little bit of an overreaction from last year's unexpected success and favorable NCAA tournament draw. I've got A&M fourth in the West and sixth in the SEC. Beard, anything else?
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I know that we have them second, and I do think they're a good. I think they have the potential to be the good team, but I do think they are slightly overrated for the SEC.
Beard or Flem, it's you guys that are causing the feedback. You better fix your shit for the next podcast.
I think it's Flem, and it might be he's leaning the iPad up against something because Beard's muted right now, but we'll fix it in the post pod. Flem, do you have an overrated team in the SEC though?
It's Arkansas.
You want to elaborate on it at all, or just throw it out there? Tennessee.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna let the first 3 games they play do the talking all I need to.
All right, yeah, they're in a tough tournament over there.
Yep.
Beef, how about you?
I'm probably going A&M. It's the pitching that worries me more than anything. I mean, I think there's a few that fit that bill, but A&M was one that I had starting in. I would have liked to have picked something else just to be a little more, have a little more contradiction, but.
Yeah, so I mean that was a fun little portion. Didn't take much time, unlike the rest of the podcast. We want to finish with anything that we are officially going to bet on. So, like, we'll call this portion our best bets. So, something any of us getting down on an SEC outright price to win the SEC tournament, or are we looking into an Omaha 8 appearance or national championship prices with any of these teams, guys? Start with Beater.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no. I don't see enough value with some of the lines for early season right now that I think it's all that worthwhile. I think if you want to start to get into betting on some conference champions or something like that, but as far as making it to Omaha, like, it's so difficult to make it to Omaha, and for most of these to be, you know, like Tennessee plus 125 and some of these others like Stanford's plus 150, Ole Miss is plus 400, Arkansas plus 250. And I mean, where's the value in putting money out for 4 or 5 months to get that low odds back? I mean, we're not Mattress Mac that's throwing down millions of dollars. You know what I mean? So for me, college baseball is all about the matchups, what's happening based on what injuries you have going on there, arms starting to get tired in the middle of the season, what's the weather like, where are they playing? I'm way more interested into digging into the individual matchups as we go throughout the season.
Yeah, well said, Beav. And I think another one is, like, college baseball is such a niche market, and a lot of people that are very interested in baseball and willing to gamble on it are located in the southeast region of the country. So this is where obviously the market's going to be the most tight. There might not be a ton of spots here in the preseason that you're willing to get down on. Beard, anything that you have?
I was going to say a bit of advice if you're trying to decide on a team that you're not sure on paper if they're talented enough to get there, take a look at the coach's track record. If a guy can get to the tournament, that means that he can figure out a way towards the end to get them hot. And look no further than Ole Miss last year. So look at a coach. It's a sport that it's very important that the coach means a lot and can help you make that decision.
Yeah, but a great coach in Bianco, you're still talking 1 out of 20. So you know what I mean?
No doubt.
I don't even necessarily know about that because there's not a soul that would have said Mississippi State or Ole Miss the last 2 years. So I think honestly, when it comes to that stuff, it goes out the window. But in any sport, I've never been that big of a fan of betting for the championship at the beginning of the season anyway. I've never just seen that great of odds unless you just want to take a crazy long shot and put $1 on Eastern Kentucky. You know what I mean?
Very true, Beef, and that might stay with us for the rest of the year at Eastern Kentucky. I love it. Flem, anything that you're on in the preseason here?
I think Stanford's a lock for Omaha.
We're talking SEC though, Flem.
Okay, we're talking SEC. Give me Dylan. Give me Dylan Cruz as your Golden Spikes and SEC.
2023 conference realignment.
There you go. Stanford's coming to the SEC.
I thought we were just talking betting in general.
No, I think Dolander as pitcher of the year in the SEC is way more of a lock than Dylan Cruz for player of the year.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I disagree only because of how deep the conference is in pitching.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a show without giving out one, at least at the end of the episode, and I'm going to do that. I only have one, and it's South Carolina to appear in Omaha. It's plus 1250 right now, and when I look at futures in the preseason, I look at stuff that's not going to get any better than what it is right now, in my opinion. And I think that's exactly what you have with the Gamecocks, who have a top 3 weekend rotation in the SEC. And I've said this before on this podcast. I'll say it again. Stud pitching is going to beat stud hitting 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, with a 1 through 4 starting rotation of Will Sanders, Noah Hall, Eli Jersenbeck, and Jack Mahoney, plus Matthew Becker. We saw it last year with Ole Miss's arms. They were really good down the stretch, the final stretch of the season, and their bullpen was great. You had Dylan DeLucia and Hunter Elliott, who flew under the national radar for most of the year. And I just love the foundation of the South Carolina team with the pitching staff. And it ends with their closer, Cade Austin. All the Cocks need is some hot sticks at the right time during the season. Some of these transfers they got starting. They're bringing in Gavin Cassis, who's the brother of Red Sox prospect Tristan. Gavin came from Vandy. Caleb Denny from Oral Roberts, Jacob Compton from Memphis, and Will McGillis from Southern Miss to go along with the Cox top returners, and Braylon Wemmer and Michael Braswell on the left side of the infield. I think this will be the best price you get South Carolina all year. You can get South Carolina to appear in Omaha, and I recommend you to do it right now at plus 1250. So with that concludes the SEC preview podcast. We'll have another one on just a national preview that should be a little bit quicker. We're just going to go over some of our best bets, some takes, and our Omaha 8s. And then further on in the week, whether it's Thursday night or maybe even Friday, we'll have a show, live show talking about Friday's games where you can comment, asking about games and angles and whatnot, talk about all the prices that are available for Friday's games. Thank you all for tuning in. This is the college baseball experience, and you're living a better experience. Talk to you all later next time. Peace out.